Welcome everybody to the third virtual community meeting for the Central Bikeway Study. We're just going to wait a little while for all of our attendees to come into the attendee room. Thank you. So we do have live interpretation today. If you would like Spanish or Vietnamese interpretation, you can move your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, and there's a button there that says interpretation. Click on it, and you can choose English, Spanish, or Vietnamese.
Para las personas de que necesitan la interpretación el día de hoy para esta presentación, la estamos ofreciendo en español. Como se puede ver en la pantalla, bájese donde dice ES o Spanish, seleccione ahí y entonces nos pasaremos a un canal donde únicamente escuchará mi interpretación en español. Así que levante la mano si necesita ayuda. Gracias.
Great. And everyone else who is would like English, please go down to the interpretation channel and click the English channel. Thank you. And then click mute original audio. If you don't click that, you will hear everything, including all the interpretation at the same time. So click the language that you would like, English, Spanish, or Vietnamese, and then click mute original audio.
Muy bien, buenas noches. Ya estamos en el canal de español. Levante la mano. Si usted
We'll go on to the next slide.
Queremos saber cuántas personas nos pueden va a necesitar interpretación el día de hoy.
A bit about Zoom and how to. We're all pretty familiar with this. We ask that if you can, please rename yourself and provide your name, your city, or your organization if you'd like. You may type questions and comments in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of the screen. If you move your mouse down, you'll see Q&A. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking. And if you'd like to speak during the Q&A session, you can use the raise hand feature. We'll call on you, unmute you, and then we ask that you lower your hand after speaking. We are recording this meeting so that we can distribute it later. So how to participate. If you would like to speak, the host will unmute you, and you'll see a pop-up button, and you click unmute myself so you can speak. If you want to raise your hand, we've shown what the raise hand feature looks like. And if you'd like to Q&A, the button is right there. It'll open the panel, you can ask a question, and we will either answer the question verbally or a typed answer. We do have several points during the presentation where we will be having Q&A opportunities. Go to the next slide. All right. We're going to meet the project team, and I have to say the project manager, Brent, unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, so I'm actually filling in for him. My name is Lauren Ledbetter. I'm a senior transportation planner at VTA. I manage the bicycle and pedestrian program. And with us today are Emily Duchan, who is the project manager for the consulting team. Hi, Emily. She works for Alta Planning and Design. We also have two representatives from our community-based organizations that are working closely with us to get great feedback from the community. We have Jackie Franco from Meta, and we have Sarah Draitling from the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. So I wanted to thank everyone for being here. Go to the next slide. We also have many project partners. VTA is leading the project, but we are working very closely with city staff from the city of San Jose, from the city of Santa Clara, from the County of Santa Clara, and from Caltrans. And tonight, John Brazil is here from the City of San Jose, and Carol Chariot is here from the City of Santa Clara, and they are able to answer questions about particular things in their city. So thank you for attending. Okay. So the agenda, we're going to provide just a recap on the project's vision, goals, and timeline. Talk a bit about the previous rounds of engagement that we've had, and explain what we've been up to since the last time you heard from us. We also, towards the end, want to, after we do the big reveal and tell you what the top ranked alternative is, we really want to hear back from you and know if we've gotten it right. And of course, like I mentioned, there's going to be Q&A throughout the process. I just actually saw a question in the Q&A from Kyle. Will tonight's slides be available for offline viewing? And yes, and I believe we actually have a link to the presentations. If you go, you can see that the links to the English, the Spanish, and the Vietnamese presentations are in the Q&A. Okay, we can go to the next slide. All right.
So we've had several engagement principles as we've progressed on this road with the Central Bikeway. We've aimed to actively reach underrepresented communities, build trust and respect with the community, make it relevant, you speak and we listen, and to not lose sight of joy. So both Meta and the GRPC, the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy, in conjunction with Alta Planning and the BTA and Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, have done several different methods of community outreach and engagement. Speaking on behalf of the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy, we have engaged the community at the recent Viva Calle, as well as distributing flyers, posting flyers throughout the Guadalupe River Park, talking to the community as they inquire about the project, as well as sharing on social media channels to promote the Central Bikeway project. So we also have a poll here. This is the first of a few today. So who's here today? So in terms of demographics, the VTA collects demographic information to help make informed decisions during project planning and transit service delivery. For example, we may adjust our outreach strategy for the Central Bikeway if the information collected is not representative of users and the population in the study area. This information is always optional and always kept private.
So this is a poll that does have 4 questions. And so on your screen, you may need to scroll down, and you will have to answer, although it is optional, you will have to select an answer for each of the 4 questions before the blue submit, or before the submit button will turn blue. So I see a couple folks have participated. We can leave it open for a little bit longer, just so everybody can get oriented with the polls. We'll be using this type of Zoom poll to collect your feedback and have the meeting be interactive throughout the rest of the meeting. So if you have any questions about how to use the Zoom poll, feel free to raise your hand and we can address some of those logistic questions now. All right,
everyone.
Yeah, we almost got everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and I think we can end the poll and share the results. And Lauren, can you summarize who's with us tonight?
Sure, I will. And I think everyone might be able to see this and scroll down. I'm not sure. So in terms of age, we have a range of ages from 18 to 74. Most of the participants, about half of them, are in the 55 to 74 age range. In terms of gender, we are heavily on the male side. And in terms of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, No one here has indicated that they are of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. And in terms of racial group, most participants are white, and we do have a few people who identify as Asian or Asian American. So those demographics are not super representative of the study area, but I know that Emily is going to be talking a bit about the outreach that we've done to date, which I think is a bit more representative of the study area. So, but that said, we are so happy that you are all here with us tonight. And I think I should indicate we have, I think it's about 10 people who are here in the audience. I know that you can't see each other, so I just wanted to make sure you knew kind of how many people are here. Great. So I'm going to get into kind of the background of the study and how did we actually get here thinking about bike superhighways and specifically about the Central Bikeway. So in Santa Clara County, we actually have a tremendous amount of biking opportunities. There's about 800 miles of bike paths and bike lanes in the county. 200 miles of those are actual bike paths, which is pretty incredible. We, as an agency, VTA, are proposing a concept of a cross-county network for bicycle superhighways that will allow people to connect across the county from city to city on what are lower stress routes. So this study, the Central Bikeway Study, came directly from that idea of the bike superhighways, and the bike superhighways idea actually came directly from the countywide bike plan, which was adopted in 2008. So the idea for bike superhighways, there's a concept map to the right. They're mostly separated from automobiles. We've identified 17 potential corridors. And the idea is these would provide high quality connections, be joyful. And one of the things they will do is also build on that 200-mile network of trails that are already in the county. The network includes on-street bikeways that are currently being planned by the local agencies. And I think it's important to state that while we would love the idea of fully trail, a network that was entirely trails, there's just not enough space and right-of-way in the county to do the connections all on trails. So some of these we know will have to be on street. So you can go to the next slide. Great. So this is the Central Bikeway Study. This is the first feasibility study that VTA that's come out of this concept of a superhighway network for the county. We chose this location for several reasons. It provides great connections to multiple transit areas. So if you go to the left, it connects the Lawrence Caltrain Station, the Santa Clara Caltrain Station, College Park Station. It connects, it will provide a key bicycle connection to the newly opened Berryessa BART station, which is currently the southern terminus of BART in the county. It also crosses several excellent, very well-used north-south trails. San Tomas Aquinas Creek Trail in Santa Clara, the Guadalupe River Trail, and the Coyote Creek Trails in San Jose. VTA Light Rail goes through it. And also one of the things that we heard from the bike plan and the outreach we did in the bike plan is it's really difficult to go east-west in the county. So we wanted to make sure we looked in an area where we could make that connection. And we chose what's probably one of the hardest locations to go east-west because right in the middle of the study area is the San Jose Airport. So we can go to the next slide. We developed in collaboration with the community this concept of this vision that the Central Bikeway, we would be able to create a bicycle superhighway that will provide a joyful, continuous, connected, and comfortable bikeway between Santa Clara and North San Jose. And we'll talk a little bit more about joy. It's joyful. All right, next slide. We also have several goals that we're trying to meet with this feasibility study. They're listed here. We're looking at equity, including racial equity. We're looking at safety, and this means both safety from motor vehicles, but also personal safety. We're looking at sustainable mobility. So is a bikeway alignment going to allow more people to leave their cars at home? Is a bikeway alignment going to connect to transit and allow people to really get around the county sustainably? We've asked the community about both what alignment they would prefer, as well as where they actually want to bike to. And that's included in the community desired project. We're also looking at how the bikeway provides access, and particularly access to the low stress network that exists crossing through the study area. We're looking for ways to provide joy and making this like a nice bikeway to ride on. And of course, we're working with the local agencies, with San Jose and Santa Clara and Caltrans and the county, to make sure that the project alignment is compatible with the city's existing and future plans for their roadway and trail network. So this is the project schedule. Start from the top and read down. So we began the study a bit over a year ago in August and have done a lot of work since then. We looked at, after looking at existing conditions, we reviewed several different options, went to the community with some of our different options and got input there. And then we are at the point where we've selected the preferred design and we're presenting it to the community to get feedback. So that's the third bullet down. We anticipate that we'll have a draft study out later this fall and winter, probably more like winter. And we will ask for input from the community at that point. And then the final study will be completed by this coming February. So that was kind of a quick overview of the project. I want to know, are there any questions so far? You can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I see one hand raised in the attendees, or you can write a question in the Q&A. All right, so I see Christine has her hand raised.
Yes, so I came a bit late, but I was just wondering, is it?
I think, Christine, are you unmuted?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Yes, I should be unmuted.
It looks like Christine might be talking, but can you hear her, Lauren?
I cannot hear her. Christine, did you choose the English channel? Max can hear her.
Yes,
all the participants can hear her. Okay. Maybe if I unmute the original audio, I'll hear her. Christine, can you say something?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can. I had to unmute the original audio. Are you in the English room?
Yes, I believe so. I didn't change it to anything else.
Okay. Well, you actually have to select the English room. If you go to interpretation.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait, so
it was a little confusing.
What room am I in by default? It just says off.
By default, you're in the general room, but because we're doing interpretation, we need everyone to select a room.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So
and all the participants should select the English room, and then we can all talk with each other. So do you see the button on the bottom of the screen? It says.
Yeah, I got that. I'm in the
perfect. And then you can go ahead and mute original audio. Okay. After all that, what is your question, Christine, or your comment?
My question, I came a little bit late. Is the bikeway off the road, or is it just like a side lane on the existing? It looks like from the map, it looks like just a side lane in existing highways.
So we looked at a variety of options and alternatives, which included both on street, like right adjacent to the road, as well as trail options. And I think rather than answer the question right now. I want to have Emily walk through the whole process so you can see, but we did look at a variety of options, both on street and off street.
Oh, you looked at a variety of options. Does that mean one has been selected already, or that's still open? Like you have a preferred route, and are you saying that it hasn't been designated yet if it's going to be off-road or on-road, or?
I don't want to give it away.
Oh, okay. So
we're going to tell you.
Oh, you're going to tell us later in the presentation.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Okay, then I'll hold that.
We're going to tell you, but we want to have a run up to it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay.
I'm sorry. All right. Great. Can we transfer Christine back to the attendees? I'm not sure how to do that. Okay. I think the next, Emily, you're next, right?
Yes.
Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry. There's two other questions. One other questions.
Yeah, so there's, in addition to Christine, one of our attendees says they are curious why this study seeks to protect both cyclists and drivers. What does that mean? Considering we live in an automobile dominated area, the safety of the cyclist should be considered more. When I ride my bike, I tend to avoid driving on busy roads because of the dangerous driving that are present on a daily basis. So what does this mean to protect both cyclists and drivers?
Mm-hmm. So I think there might have been a misinterpretation of something that I said. Perhaps the study is focusing on the safety of bicyclists. So we looked at when I said the safety from, I might have said of cars, I meant safety from cars. So we looked at how safe are the different corridors based on, interactions with vehicles. But there's another type of safety that we also considered, which is personal safety, for example, safety from crime. So hopefully that clarifies it. So we didn't look at safety of cars.
Yeah, so that's a good clarification. Thanks for asking that question, Kyle. I think that things will become more clear as we step through the presentation a little bit more. So I'm going to keep us going and share a little bit about what we learned during the previous rounds of engagement. So we have conducted 2 rounds of engagement. This is our 3rd time coming back to you. The first round was in the fall of 2020 and the second in last spring of this year. Each round we hosted 2 virtual community meetings like this one, as well as an online survey. And in addition, our CBO partners conducted in-person engagement in conjunction to some of the other outreach work that they were doing, like diaper distribution. Smeta was out there. You can see Jackie and her team on the bottom photo. We're out doing other outreach in the community during the pandemic, and we're able to also reach folks about this project. Since it was the pandemic, neighborhood groups were hosting virtual meetings, and so our partners also attended a number of neighborhood virtual meetings and interacted in smaller group settings. What we took a look at who we reached from the previous rounds of engagement, and like Lauren mentioned before, the study area is really diverse, and the Central Bikeway is trying to meet the needs of people who are not currently biking for everyday travel needs. So historically, those people are women, non-binary, and people of color. And so we've charted if we were reaching those folks. And when we look at the demographic data we collected, we do see that we're at least getting a balanced representation compared with white men, who are historically been the folks who make up the largest portion of our cyclists today. So in addition, we saw an increase in the percentage of new bike riders or commuters during our second round of engagement, which we really attribute to our CBO partners helping with outreach and engagement efforts in the community. So these are folks who aren't using their bikes every day and who would be new users of the bikeway. So we heard that safety is a top priority goal for the project, and that was followed by a community desired project And then sustainable mobility and access were tied, and also providing joy was one of the top goals that people shared with us that was important to them. And then we heard that the top 3 ways the Central Bikeway could help you choose riding your bike instead of driving or carpooling would be to provide a comfortable bikeway or roads that connect with where you need to go. Feeling safer when you ride on streets with traffic, and also a bikeway that's quick and efficient. So we collected informations on an interactive map and through discussions on the destinations that you want to reach by bike, so that we can assess if the bikeway is going to provide access to where you said you needed to go. And then in this past spring, we brought you these 3 alternatives that you can see in the map. The green line is the trail trackway, the orange line is the Welsh Wizard, and the purple line is the short liner. And we asked you to select your preferred alignment in these 3 areas: Santa Clara, around the airport, and in San Jose. So in Santa Clara, the trail trackway was the clear winner, which provided a trail along the Caltrain corridor, followed by the short liner, which is a bikeway on El Camino. Around the airport, it was much closer, nearly a tie between the 3. And in San Jose, the trail trackway or a trail along the highway corridor ranked highest, followed by the Welsh Wizard, which used heading to Berryessa Road. And when we asked people why they chose that particular alignment, really the top reason was that there was a preference for riding on a trail. So we see this again, where we asked people what their preferred bikeway is to ride on, and 48% independent of a route, and 48% prefer an off-street trail. So when we asked why, we heard because trails feel safer, they take people like to be away from cars and traffic, and people also express concern at conflict points when riding on the streets, like when you're crossing a side street or at driveways. So finally, we heard that 53% of people do want to see a bikeway that can be built more quickly on the street network versus new trail corridors that would take more time to build. So that's a lot of input that we've gathered so far, and we've used all this great community feedback to help evaluate those 3 alternatives that we shared earlier in the spring. And the alternatives analysis is a process for getting from those 3 alternatives down to a top ranked alternative. So this alternatives analysis process was driven by the 7 goals that Lauren shared, and these were established early on in the project. And again, we got your feedback on those goals from the last 2 rounds of engagement. And really, on their own, there's no singular way to measure these goals. They're really inherently complex. So what we did was each of these goals were broken down into 3 or 4 measurable criteria, which were informed by data from a technical analysis, as well as feedback from our project partners, our stakeholders, and the community. So examples of these measurable criteria include like available right-of-way, or is there space available to build the bikeway? And that was part of the project measuring project compatibility. Or the number of intersections along the route and exposure to vehicles, and that was part of measuring the safety goal. So these criteria allow us to provide an objective comparison between the alternatives. So again, the 3 alternatives, or there's 3 alternatives, and they were compared across the 3 different areas. And by evaluating across these 3 areas, it provided a more detailed comparison. And so it enabled the preferred alternative to be the best possible sort of mix and match combinations of the alternatives between the areas. And that's how we looked at it. And when we were thinking about maybe it's going to be one line, but it could also have been a mix and match of the lines. So let's show you the results. first I'm going to orient you to this table and the slide, what you're looking at here. So on the left-hand column, you see the 7 goals that are being compared. And then the 3 tables to the right represent the results for the 3 areas from Santa Clara to San Jose. So the first column of each table is the Walsh Wizard. And then the second column for each table is the Trail Trackway. And the third is the Shortliner. And then everything is scored on this range of colors. So the lighter blue colors indicate where the alternative simply meets the goal, while the darker blue colors indicate where the alternative exceeds the goal and is a top performer. So on the bottom row is the overall ranking. And as you can see, for all 3 areas, the Shortliner was the top performer overall in the alternatives analysis. So I'm going to point out some details and just highlight a few key pieces of the alternatives analysis to give you an idea of the thinking behind it. So in Santa Clara, both the Trail Trackway and the Shortliner performed well for the community desired project goal. So the Trail Trackway was the top selected segment from the second round of outreach, where you saw that graph that I showed you earlier. And the Shortliner also was the second ranked. So it went to the Trail Trackway and then the Shortliner. But the Shortliner also provided by far the best access to the community identified destinations from the first round of outreach. So therefore, it became the top performing alternative when we combine the results from both rounds of engagement for the community desired project goal in Santa Clara. So moving on to around the airport, the Shortliner connects to the most transit stops and employment centers, notably convenient access to College Park and the Santa Clara Caltrain stations on the south side of the airport. And then in San Jose, the Walsh Wizard and the Shortliner were both top performers, with the Shortliner performing only slightly better overall. And across all 3 areas, a recurring theme was that the Shortliner exceeded the goals by the darker blue colors and routinely performed best for access. I'll just complete with 2 more points. So the 3 alternatives met and exceeded the safety goal, which considers, as Lauren was describing before, separation from traffic, exposure to vehicles, traffic speed, and perceived safety, which is looking at personal crime. The Trail Trackway was the top performer for safety in Santa Clara and San Jose, as it largely features an off-street trail with significant separation from roadways and vehicles. However, the protected bikeways for the Shortliner do include design features that will make the bikeways safer than traditional protected bikeways. And I'll be sharing some conceptual illustrations that show off these safety design features in just a minute. So based on the alternatives analysis, the top ranked alternative in all 3 areas is the Shortliner. And to recap this alternative, it connects from west to east along El Camino Real to the Alameda, and then to Heading Street before utilizing 10th and 11th Streets to connect to Taylor, and then finally to Mayberry Road, and that goes to King Road. So we just shared how we screened the alternatives using the technical analysis and stakeholder and community input, and to select that top ranked alternative. So now we're going to check back in to see how the preferred alternative is meeting community needs. So first, you told us that you wanted to connect to destinations where you need to go. And the Shortliner does connect to the greatest number of community identified destinations that you said were important to you. And second, you told us that you wanted an efficient and quick route. And so the Shortliner is the shortest alternative, both in terms of distance and travel time. We also heard that you enjoy a trail-like experience, and the Trail Trackway received the most votes because it was the alternative with the most trails, and having that trail-like experience you said was important to you. So although the shortliner runs along the road network,
Estoy revisando
it
nada
could
más. ¿Hay todavía
incorporate
personas
design
aquí en
features
el canal
that
de español?
promote
Levanta
some of
la
the
mano
feelings
si hay.
associated with being on a trail, and that's the feeling of openness, safety, flow, physical comfort. And all of these elements work together to make it feel more like a trail experience. So this is what the Central Bikeway could look like along Taylor Street. It's wide to promote a feeling of that openness and allow you to ride side by side with a friend or pass another rider. It has a large landscaped curved buffer to provide separation from adjacent traffic. It's showing a raised crossing along the side street to help raise visibility and promote flow of the rider and maintain all the human power that you're putting into riding a bike. And finally, there are shade trees to enhance physical comfort and to provide urban cooling benefits. So all of these design elements help the bikeway feel more like a trail-like experience, even though it is an on-street facility. So we're going to launch our first sort of feedback poll of the night to get your feedback on some of these design features that would encourage you to ride on the Central Bikeway. So Vesna, you can go ahead and launch this poll. So the poll has one question in 3 languages. So please only answer the poll in your preferred language. You will need to select the not applicable choice in the other 2 languages before that submit button at the bottom of the poll will turn blue. So I will read all these choices to give everybody some time to answer the poll questions. So we would like some feedback on which of the following features for the shortliner would encourage you to ride on the Central Bikeway. So choice A, a wide bikeway to make it feel open and uncrowded. A physical barrier along the bikeway with physically protected bike waiting zones at major intersections to make the bikeway feel safe from vehicles. C, signals that turn green when bicyclists approach and raised crossing at side streets to promote a continuous flow. D, shades trees and landscaping to reduce temperatures and create shade, making the bikeway feel more physically comfortable. Choice E, rest areas with amenities such as bike parking, drinking fountains, seating, and public art. And then we have another option for providing other suggestions that we didn't capture in the previous choices. And if you do have other options, we'd love for you to share what those are in the Q&A box. Again, you will have to select not applicable on the other 2 languages that you didn't answer in order for the submit button to turn blue. And feel free to use the Q&A. So I do see that I'm going to give it a little bit more time. We have about 40% of people have participated so far. And again, you can, and for this question, you can select as many features as you think are important.
Emily, I wanted to just jump in and note that Kyle indicated that the slides that we provided the links to are for round 2, not round 3. So I think we'll have to get the right URLs and repost. So I will work on that.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, I think we can close the poll. Okay, I'll go ahead and share some of the feedback. Everybody really thinks that the physical barrier along the bikeway with protected bike waiting zones at intersections, so intersection improvements are really important. Also the wide bikeway and signals that provide some preemption or they turn green when bicyclists approach, as well as providing shades trees and landscaping, followed by rest areas. So I don't know if that's if people shared anything about other, or we do have time for a Q&A break now. So if we wanted to share some of those, the other suggestions, as well as answer some questions, this could be a good time to do that.
Okay, so we do have a few questions that have been asked. So Kyle asked the question, what does the joy category mean? It seems rather like a strange category when talking about bike paths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could start, and then I think I'm gonna have Emily finish up with that. So one of the things we wanted to make sure at VTA that we could incorporate into this was this idea of it being the superhighways being not just speedways where you can bike on, but also places where you were comfortable biking on them and they were fun, and think about biking on trails and whatnot. And so we came up with this concept of joy as something that we wanted to try to integrate into the project. And so I'll have Emily talk a little bit about like what Alta did to measure it and some ways that we're trying to incorporate it in. So.
Yeah, well, we did do some research to, there has been studies about what brings joy into people using outdoor facilities. And so some of the things that we measured particularly for this analysis was how much the route provided access to open space and parks. We also explored the idea of that it promotes this idea of flow or passive attention. It also, we measured the amount of choice that it expands. So it expands to a wider area of destinations and other bike facilities that you can't currently access today. And then we also looked at the level of effort and the slopes that would be how much you'd have to climb up and down. Some of the alternatives had more ramps and elevated bikeways. And so we measured sort of the level of effort associated with the alternatives. So those were the 4 criteria that we used to sort of measure that joy goal. And hopefully that provides some feedback on that.
Great. And then Fan also chimed in. He said more than half of the surveyed preferred trails, and yet you folks just picked shortliner, even though it lines with El Camino Real, which even seasoned bicyclists would consider tough to bike on. Any response to that?
I would say that when we started out with the 3 alternatives, we really honestly didn't know which one would come up to the top. But we worked with the community to identify a variety of criteria that were important. And when we looked at the different criteria, there's some reasons why El Camino Real and the shortliner, there's a lot of reasons why it comes up to the top, which Emily outlined in terms of getting people to where they want to go. But we do recognize that it's definitely not the trail-like experience that the community has asked for. And so what we're trying to do with the potential designs is figure out how can we put a trail-like experience on a street like El Camino. And also it's not just on, it goes to Heading and other streets in San Jose, which are less trafficked. So Emily, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or.
Well, maybe we can we're going to be showing renderings of what the El Camino Real bikeway could look like in a few slides. And so we have a number of other questions, but we can certainly come back to that question after we've reviewed some of the renderings so that maybe you have a more context and we can provide more feedback about that.
Okay. So Carl asks, does the bike path have bumps, ramps up and down, over street intersections? Ramps are a problem, making riding hard.
Yeah, I would say absolutely we recognize that as an issue. And in the initial designs, Alta is looking at minimizing ramping up and ramping down.
All right, and then Fan also has a statement. The large number of cars will make the air feel very different from a real trail. Any response there?
Yeah, we recognize that as well. And I think Emily might be talking a bit about, would you be able to go into that, Emily, when we start talking about the conceptual designs and ideas that we have for trying to address that?
Yeah, we can show, you know, one of the key features that we're trying to get across the entire corridor is trees and landscape. And so, you know, those are some of the elements that are consistent along all the corridors to make it cohesive, that are working to help build, a wider buffer and improve that experience right adjacent to traffic. So I do know that there have been a number of other questions asked, and we could save them for our final Q&A if we should keep going. Does that sound good, Lauren?
I'm okay with that. I think we'll probably have time to answer most of these questions at the next round.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for submitting great questions. It's helpful to make sure that everybody's understanding the project well. Okay, so now we will get into showing you what the Central Bikeway will look and feel like, what it could look and feel like. So along El Camino Real and the Alameda, the Central Bikeway is proposing sidewalk level, one-way separated bikeways. So this is in alignment with the El Camino Real specific plan. So the bikeway would be located in a space that's currently used for on-street parking, seen in the existing photo on the left. So as shown in this conceptual rendering on the right, a landscape buffer with street trees would provide separation between the bikeway and the adjacent cars. At bus stops, the bikeway would route behind the bus island where people would wait to board the bus. So we are going to launch our next poll, and the poll has two questions. The first question is a simple yes and no. Would these design features shown make you feel more comfortable and encourage you to ride on this bikeway? Yes or no? And then the next question is about getting feedback on some of these specific features. And so we have seven or eight options here for you, and we're hoping that you can help narrow down and select what are your top 3 features that would have this biggest impact on your comfort level or encourage you to ride along El Camino Real here. So number 1 is a 7-foot wide bikeway. So that is wider than a traditional on-street bikeway, so that it would allow you to ride side by side with a friend. In this particular case, it would be adjacent in the same level as the sidewalk. There would be a bus boarding island that's adjacent to the curb. Shade trees and landscape you can see in the background of this photo here. It's the fact that it does have a setback from traffic. There would be new pedestrian and bike scaled lighting. It would have safer driveway crossings than exist today. And it would also include directional signage and opportunities for branding to make it cohesive amongst the different jurisdictions it passes through. And then, of course, if you have other ideas, we'd love to hear that feedback as well. So we have about 50% of folks have participated in the survey. Maybe we'll leave it open for 10 more seconds or so. So go ahead and hit that submit button, and we'll share the results. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So we have 64% of folks here tonight who do say yes, the design features would make you feel comfortable, and 27% say no. In terms of the features that folks feel are most comforting is that they're separated from traffic, with 82% selecting that option. There's a tie for the wide bikeway, as well as having safer driveway crossings, followed by shade trees and landscape, and then bus boarding islands and directional signage. We do feel free to type in the Q&A if there are any other comments for other things that we should be considering. And Lauren or Vesna, if you see any of those, feel free to share them.
Sure. I see Tony recommending separation of pedestrians and bicyclists as much as possible, and might want to plan for vastly increased bicycle traffic volumes in the future. Definitely.
Yeah, good comment. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. There's also some questions about parking that maybe we could answer at the end.
Okay. Okay, well then we'll go along to Heading Street. And at Heading, the existing buffered bike lanes would be upgraded to a protected bikeway. So different from what we just saw in El Camino Real, the bikeway would be at street level and would largely maintain the existing on-street parking. The proposed improvements at signalized intersections include protected bike waiting zones to help improve safety connecting to adjacent bikeways, as well as traffic signal improvements to help maintain bike flow. And new street trees, lighting, and wayfinding, as you've seen, are common elements along the bikeway. So we have the same poll for Heading Street. Very similar questions. The first one is if the design features shown would make you feel comfortable and encourage you to ride the bikeway. You could share your response there. And then the second question is, again, we're asking you to select your top 3 features that would have the biggest impact, on your comfort level. So again, is it the wide 7-foot bikeway? Would it be the traffic signal improvements to maintain bike flow, that preemption that bicyclists would get as they approach the intersection? Would it be the protected bike waiting zones at the intersection to make it have protected areas to cross and make connections on adjacent streets with bikeways? Is it the shade trees or the actual fact that there is a curbed separation from the traffic? Maybe it's the pedestrian lighting or the directional signage. And again, share your thoughts on what other features aren't captured here. So again, we have 50% of folks participating in the poll, and we'll keep it open maybe for 20 more seconds. Okay, great. We have the same amount of participation as El Camino Real. So 80% of folks feel this corridor provides features that would make them feel comfortable, slightly higher than the last one, and 20% said no. In terms of the specific elements, again, that feeling of being separated from traffic and having that protected buffer is the top feature, followed by the protected bike waiting zones at intersections. And then we also have the wide bikeway and shade trees, followed by traffic signal improvements and lighting. Are there any other comments that folks have, Lauren, that they typed into the Q&A?
So Kyle wrote, I second the last question about separation of bikes and peds. I ride on the Coyote Creek Trail, and a frequent issue is pedestrians getting in the way of cyclists.
Common theme there. Question about why, from Carl, why does the bikeway need to be at the sidewalk level? It seems to be better to be at street level with curbs like in the heading picture.
So one of the reasons, yeah, do you want me to answer that one, Lauren?
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you talk a bit about the design choices you're making?
Okay, sure. So one of the reasons, the driving reason why the El Camino bikeway is at the sidewalk level is because of the high number of driveways that exist along El Camino Real, and raising people on bikes up to the sidewalk level is a way that we can help make them more visible and provide additional protection from cars turning in and out of the driveways. And so that was the main driving reason, was to improve safety at driveway crossings that drove that design decision. Any other questions on this one? Or maybe we'll go to Taylor and then we can take more questions back about El Camino Real. So on Taylor, we showed this rendering earlier in the presentation of what the Central Bikeway could look like along Taylor. So in this segment, it's a two-way protected bikeway on the south side of the street. It has a raised crossing along the side streets to help raise the visibility and promote flow of the riders. Finally, it has the landscaped curb buffer to provide separation from adjacent traffic and create an area for new shade trees. And then again, this one also is featuring lighting and wayfinding along the route. So the same poll, we're going to launch it as our second to last poll. And we're going to ask your feedback specifically about this design typology that you see along Taylor. And would the design features shown make you feel comfortable and encourage you to ride on this two-way bikeway? Yes or no? And then specifically, which features shown have the biggest impact on your comfort level? So again, if you could limit your choices to your top three. Is it the 12-foot wide bi-directional protected bikeway? Is it the raised crossings at the cross streets? Is it the shade trees and landscape? Is it the fact that it has a curb separation from traffic? Is it the fact that we're highlighting safer driveway crossings? Or is it the lighting and signage or something else? So we have 64% participation on this poll. We'll leave it open for 10 more seconds. I don't want to close it too early if people are making tough choices between their elements. Okay, we're going to go ahead and end this poll, share the results. So again, 78% of folks think that the design features make them feel comfortable, and 22% say no. And then in terms of the features, we have 3 for 3 with providing that curb separation from traffic being the highest rated feature. Again, then followed by the raised crossings at the side intersections and having safer driveway crossings, as well as, the 12-foot wide bidirectional bikeway and lighting and shade trees. So before we open it up to the full Q&A, this is our very last poll of the evening. And so we're asking folks that now that you've seen the potential design features, Does the route meet your expectations for the Central Bikeway? And yes, if it does, we would love to hear more in our open discussion or in the Q&A. Or if it didn't, please also feel free to share. We want to hear more what expectations were not met. And also feel free to share if it's meeting some expectations or not, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And so we can have that discussion as well. So we'll leave the poll open for a few more seconds as folks think about their answers and chime in. We're only at 42% participation, so we'll leave it open for a few more seconds or so. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and end the last poll. So overall, 56% feel the features are meeting your, or feel that the features are meeting your expectations, and 44% are not meeting our expectations for the bikeway. So I'm going to go ahead and click to so maybe Lauren, do you want to finish up these last slides and we'll open it up for Q&A?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute myself. So we also have an online survey that's available to you. And it's available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And I think is that last one Chinese as well. So it's some of the same questions that we've asked you here. But we would appreciate you if you would be able to go to that as well. And I believe that the links are posted in the chat. I'm double checking. Yes, they are posted in the chat. So you can go ahead and do that on your own time. And go to the next slide. I think it's just the engagement schedule. Should we do Q&A or engagement schedule, Emily?
We reviewed this and then we just opened it up for Q&A.
Okay. So you can see where we are, fall 2021. This is the third round of outreach events. And we're really in the point where we're refining the preferred bikeway alternative. We are going to be working based on feedback that we get from this outreach, and also information that we get back from, we're going to be working with our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee at BTA, and working closely with city staff, and come out with a draft study in winter and ask once again, did we get it right? So I think with that, we can take, I know we have a lot of questions that people want to have answered, so I think we have some time to do that.
So we did have a number of questions and comments come through. There were two here about protected intersections. So David had asked, are there plans for protected intersections? And Christine wrote, intersections are by far the most dangerous. I have often had close calls on major intersections on trails that go both ways on the same side of the street, such as the San Thomas Aquino Trail at El Camino. Cars are not used to looking for bikes coming in both directions. Does this path avoid intersections at all? Being on road does not feel trail-like at intersections. That is where the most danger is.
So we do have plans for protected intersections at several of the major intersections. And Emily, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so along the corridor, anytime that the Central Bikeway connects to an existing or planned bikeway or trail, any kind of bikeway, there are plans for protected intersections. And so those look differently because intersections do look different along the corridor. And so as part of the conceptual design plans that are being developed, that is a feature that we're working closely with all of the project partners, that being Caltrans, the city of Santa Clara as well as San Jose to meet the design standards for those protected intersection designs. I'll also say that in addition to the protected intersections, which provide, you know, areas, curbed areas for people to wait on bikes to turn on and off of the Central Bikeway. Along Heading Street, the project is also proposing signal preemption so that the timing of the signals could indicate when bicyclists are approaching and help keep bikes moving at the same pace along segments of the Central Bikeway.
I should clarify, it's not preemption. That's what ambulances, or what, not even ambulances, that's what like Caltrain has, is preemption. It would be where it just switches.
Detection.
It would be like advance notice. So holding a green a little longer, or making the red stop a little shorter. So it's slightly different.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So
Yeah.
advanced detection is what we're
It's detection, and then speaking to the signals and saying, okay, get ready to turn green. There's a bicyclist coming. So
there were two questions here about parking. So Kyle wrote, a concern because the area is still automobile centric. Will the project provide alternative parking elsewhere to replace lost parking availability if the current parking is used at all? And Fan wrote, I'm sorry to say, but putting bikeways or parking spaces will pit cyclists against local business owners and drivers, create more animosity where we least want them.
right. I can start that, and then if our city partners want to weigh in at all, they can. In developing the projects and the alignments, and particularly once we came down to this short liner alignment, we made sure that we were working in line with city plans for their roadways. So for the city of Santa Clara, they're in the process of developing plans for El Camino. And they are actually proposing, it's not, I actually, it might have been a tie. I think city council was gonna vote on it this week. But the proposal on El Camino is actually to take away the on-street parking, but not in all locations. And so we know the locations where the city council has directed city staff to keep the parking. And so we have options, and we're designing something that will work with that. And I know John Brazil has his hand raised, so he could maybe speak to San Jose.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I work in the City of San Jose's Department of Transportation, and when we are proposing ways to create safer places for people to bike and looking how to use limited space on the streets, one of the options we consider is repurposing, which means removing underutilized parking spaces on streets. We don't do that willy-nilly. When we're evaluating the feasibility, we conduct parking surveys at the highest demand times of the day and week to identify what the demand for parking is. We look at zoning to see if there's plans for the neighborhood to intensify and parking demands to increase. And we only remove parking when there's adequate space to accommodate peak demand nearby. With that said, we've removed parking on over 40 streets and over 2,800 parking spaces. And so there is a way to do it without burdening folks who need the parking.
Thank you. Carol from Santa Clara, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what John had just said, is that, you know, as part of our El Camino specific plan here in Santa Clara, we did conduct a parking study just to see what that occupancy was along the corridor. And, you know, based on the results of that study, that's where we determined that, you know, there was enough parking, you know, for businesses such that we could remove the parking lane. So yes, we really look at everything before we just decide, oh, we're just going to remove the parking along the street. We actually do parking studies and at least for El Camino determined that, yes, there was enough supply for those businesses and that we wanted to remove the parking.
Thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
that local info. Do we have other questions? I know we have several others too.
Yeah, so a comment from Kyle, he wrote, in reference to the amenities, that seems to be a point of vandalism and the first point of failure on the system.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that the VTA, that we as VTA hiring Alta said was, make sure when you come up with example amenities and example treatments that you consider the maintenance and the upkeep and also things like vandalism, and don't recommend things that could be very costly or get damaged easily. So that's a great comment and something that we're aware of and we're hoping can be addressed in the design.
Question from a fan. Do you also plan to extend the bikeway along El Camino Real Pass, past Lawrence Expressway into Sunnyvale? Connectivity is key. We don't want segments of bike lanes here and there.
Yes, connectivity is absolutely key. So we, as an agency, as you know, a countywide agency, VTA is thinking about these types of things. One of the reasons why we actually chose the Central Bikeway area is because cities farther up El Camino, starting in Mountain View, Palo Alto, and then all the way up to Redwood City, have been working on what's called the Peninsula Bikeway that some of you probably are familiar with, which is trying to figure out how to make a corridor, a high quality bikeway that connects those communities roughly parallel to El Camino. And just recently there was some information posted on some listservs about, basically they have actually chosen as the preferred alternative El Camino. And so there's interest in the north and there's interest in the south. We are going to be reaching out to the city of Sunnyvale and see if there's opportunities at some point to work on providing bikeways and higher quality bikeways along El Camino within the community. So yes, there's plans to start talking about it for sure.
I see Christine has had her hand up.
Okay.
So Christine, did you want to go ahead and ask your question or comment?
Yeah, I had like a comment and kind of question. So I'm an avid biker. I just got back from the park with my son, and I also go on the St. Thomas Antiguo trail a lot in both directions. I'm on Monroe Street, and I would say like going north, it has like all the factors that I was hoping the new trail would have. Like it's very scenic. It happens to be along a canal. It goes underneath all of it's straight, so it's very efficient, and it goes under all of the pretty much all of the roads underneath, and so that also makes it incredibly safe. And my husband can, for example, bike to work faster than he can drive because it avoids all of the stoplights essentially, and so it's like very comfortable, safe, and quick and efficient. Like those were the key things that I know that people said they wanted in a bike path. So I was hoping this would have that. So I guess this new trail, it seems to be on the roadways. And I know when it was first pitched and I filled out a survey, they kind of pitched it as a bicycle freeway. So I was really, really hoping that it was going to be something similar to the St. Thomas Antiguo Trail, like going north, where it was off path, and that it also would increase not only the safety, like it would be off the road completely, but also the efficiency. Like it would be something that like we have a few of them. There's also one in Mountain View that goes like north-south along a canal that goes underneath the roadways. I was hoping it would be sort of that east to west trail that would be not only like off the road and incredibly safe, but avoid those intersections, because you are going to get like if it gets the use at the same time as Antiguo Trail gets, you're going to get like a lot of, at the few intersections where there's a light, you get a congregation of bicyclists there. It gets a lot of use, and yeah, so I guess that was kind of my question, like why the short liner was chosen over the the trail trackway, because it seems like the trail trackway, the green one, had the most votes in sort of all the categories, and it seemed very more efficient, like it's had a straighter route. With less windy, and it also seemed more off-road because it followed sort of the Caltrain, which I try to bike along Evelyn if I can when I'm in Sunnyvale, because it follows the Caltrain and I feel safer because it avoids those intersections, like I said. It not only makes the intersection safer, but it just avoids them. Like on what the Caltrain makes it so many of the roads stop there, so there just isn't an intersection, especially if I'm traveling north on Evelyn. So I'm just wondering, like, why the Shortland was chosen over the trail trackway, since the trail trackway seems to have all of these features that, like, comfortable, safe, quick and efficient, and it's more off-road qualities that people overwhelmingly said would be the most preferred in a trail.
Mm-hmm. You know, let me start with kind of like general countywide context, and then Emily, do you want to talk a bit about the criteria and everything? Mm-hmm. So I know the trails you're talking about. I take San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail when I bike to work. I use it to go under 101. I love it.
Yeah, it avoids all the intersections.
It's amazing. And I know the trail, I think you're talking about Permanente Creek Trail, maybe, or Stevens Creek Trail in
yeah, Stevens Creek Trail. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both of those are absolutely incredible trails, and they're part of like I said, that 200-mile trail network in the county. Many of the trails are along these waterways, and the waterways go north-south. And so we have a great north-south opportunities. East-west is extremely difficult. And when you're looking at it, Caltrain and then roads, those are the options, right? And there's also the Hetch Hetchy, but there's issues both with Caltrain and Hetch Hetchy in terms of how much right-of-way is available. And the Caltrain has plans for high-speed rail, and the electrification project is happening now. And so while you may look and see there's a lot of space there now, the agency needs to use it to do their transit work. So as we were moving through the process, we were looking at Caltrain as an option and the trail trackway as an option. And it became clear that there were some challenges in terms of right-of-way there. But on top of that, when we did the analysis, and I can have Emily go into it, the trail trackway, even though it definitely scored higher in terms of like what the community wanted in Santa Clara for the preferred alignment, like where you'd like to see a trail, and it scored highest for that. But there's very few connections because you're kind of stuck in that trail. So there's not as much access to other areas. And that's one of the places where it dropped down. And Emily, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the others, because we honestly, going into this, I personally had no idea which one would come up first. So I found this to be a pretty interesting assessment. Do you want to talk a bit more about it, Emily?
Yeah, so one of the driving factors is what Lauren described, and it's just that the access overall really drove the overall outcome. And not only is it direct access to the destinations along the route, but it also had the most connectivity to other low stress bikeways that you could access other destinations off of that route. And so that's something that the trail trackway really didn't perform well for. Also, we did take into, the community input was one piece of the analysis. There was this technical analysis that we're talking about in terms of the connectivity. And also our stakeholders and our agency partners also helped with how we develop some weighting between the goals to prioritize, and that also influenced the overall score of the analysis. And so I really think, Lauren captured the key points the best, and that the challenges and some of the lack of the challenges with the right-of-way and the lack of connectivity, providing access to other neighborhoods who don't have as equal access right now to community destinations, and helping connect people to transit and provide sustainable mobility, which is important for VTA. were some of the features. And so, that is why I think you've seen through the presentation that we focused on what else can we do? We're not trying to build, we realize that this is an on-street bikeway. And so we're looking for other features, enhanced features to make it feel more like a trail experience and improve the safety significantly. And so that it's not a traditional intersection where you are at one-to-one with cars, but people on bikes would have an exclusive signal and have a protected place to wait, and then have that signal to be able to use. So those are some of the treatments that we're trying to put forward to help increase the safety and that feeling of being on a trail.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing, and then I noticed that our Vietnamese translator, Tony, has his hand up, so I want to call on him next if we can. We are developing the study. It'll be a document that includes the whole assessment and the recommendations. Every one of the alignments that we evaluated meet the basic factors to become a bike superhighway. So we're deciding this is the Central Bikeway is the one we're moving forward with, or, at this point, this is what we're proposing, is this would be the one we would move forward with now. But we've done we've done the analysis and the study on the other ones, including the Caltrain, and we'll have that documented in this document. So if there are opportunities that come up to build trails along the Caltrain right-of-way, or along some of the freeway rights of way, that we have a document that says we thought about it and this is what the community said about it. So, and that's, I think, helpful in the future if there's some movement toward doing that. Tony, did you had your hand up? Do we need to unmute?
No, it was an accident.
No. I cannot hear you, Tony.
Yeah, it was a mishap. I apologize.
I think you'll have to unmute the original audio to hear Tony.
I have to unmute the original audio. Okay. Tony, what is your question?
I don't have a question. I accidentally raised my hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
My apologies.
That's okay. Tony said he accidentally raised his hand. Okay.
So we have just a few additional questions. There's one from Carl here. He says, the poll might give skewed results. The landscaping really means separate areas separating the bikeway from street. I think most would consider this more important than a wide bikeway. What is a normal width?
Normal, Emily, I'll let you take that. I think normal width for bikeway and maybe normal width for the landscaping too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll say I was the one who said maybe normal width, but I would say that, a 5-foot bikeway is sort of a minimum standard set forward by Caltrans. And so, but bikeways can range between 5 and 7 feet. And sometimes the buffered area has a greater width than that. I think, well, I saw another question about the city having bike lane cleaning equipment that can clean the bikeways. And so the 7-foot wide bikeway, the one-way bikeway, was set for 2 reasons. One is that it does allow people to comfortably ride side by side, which is, people use it for not just commuting where they need to get somewhere fast, but also to ride with a friend or your child to school or to a park. And so that is, can provide advantages. And so that was important for us. And also, the cities have equipment, at least the city of San Jose has equipment, a sweeper specifically designed that's 7 feet wide that can fit in a 7-foot wide street level protected bikeway. So that was also, maintaining a bikeway is, as you mentioned, is really important to keep clean and remove debris and glass as it builds up. Bike tires are especially sensitive little creatures that we need to keep rolling. So those were definitely considerations when we thought about that 7-foot wide bikeway. Regarding a protected buffer, we sort of set 4 feet as a minimum of feasible to include street trees in landscaping. And that still is, there are enhancements we can do to the soil underneath to make street trees be able to establish and grow in that kind of environment. Less than 4 feet would not be adequate to maintain landscape and street trees. And so if the buffer does narrow, more narrow than 4 feet, it would more likely have a cobble or a paved buffer. But in areas along the bikeway that, we have developed conceptual design plans for the whole corridor. It's 10.5 miles. And what we showed today were just very typical illustrations of the areas. And so some places where the road is wide, the buffer is much wider. And in places where it is constrained, it does narrow up. So it is what we've showed today are sort of typical conditions that you could see along the bikeway.
And then one comment or question from Philip. He wrote, Taylor Street seems to start safely and then gets chaotic. This seems to be a bikeway that's very difficult. Is this going to be even close to reality?
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, Philip, are you talking about existing conditions on Taylor Street right now? Oh, John wants to answer. I'll let John answer.
All right, thanks. Well, it would be interesting to know what Philip's referring to, because I would agree that existing conditions, particularly on the eastern part of Taylor, are not conducive to biking. There's not currently a bike facility there. Fortunately, last year, our city council approved a new bike plan that identifies the future planned bikeway on East Taylor. And the bike plan identifies it as a class 4, so it would be separated, which would align with this VTA plan. So there are plans to improve it that would improve things.
Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question, Philip? You can just chat yes or no. Okay. I don't. Vesna, are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Were we able to answer all of them?
We've answered all the ones that have come in.
Okay, that sounds great. All right.
We do have one more question, and that is, in regards to if you have suggestions for promoting future study updates, we will be coming back to you all with a draft plan later this winter. And, we have been promoting the project through email. There's been a mailer that went out to folks who live along the route. There's been various posts on social media and Nextdoor. We were also at Viva Calle with a demonstration event. So, we would love to hear if there are other ways that we should be reaching you or your friends or your family that we haven't been doing yet. Feel free to share those with us. We're open to taking feedback because we do have one more round of sharing the draft plan when it comes out.
Great. And you can contact us here, community outreach, community.outreach@vta.org, and there's our 408-321-7575. That will go to someone at community outreach, and we have a website here. We had at one point 15 members of the public attending. I want to thank you all for spending an hour and a half with us out of your time this evening and providing really excellent feedback that we're going to take to heart and use it to modify some of the things on the bikeway. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Dean, I think we can end the meeting, right? And I'll
Thank
grab
you, guys.
Christine's last comment. So we have it.
I was saying thank you, but on the Spanish channel. So I'm saying it now, thank you in the English channel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.